It's officially Christmas, and I'm officially yours.
We should make shirts to say it's okay to leave the family text thread.
Yes.
Mi mejor amigo.
Yes.
Oh, my brain's wild.
Beautiful. It is very
That
wild.
is not always beautiful.
Broken is beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
Family members pushing boundaries despite prior discussions.
I'm not promoting lying, although I have said a few times on this show, like you can make something up. Because it's baby steps. It's baby steps, kind of.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, always.
I'm a big fan of just standing up and not using words, but sound effects to describe what you're doing to escape.
Yeah. Yeah. Walks away. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Figurative door slam, and that's on something. I don't know what it is.
Welcome to this episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer, and I'm your co-host today.
Yep, that's right.
This is a really special day. All of our recording days are special, but I love our conversations on and off camera. Erin Dugan, my producer, is co-hosting with me today, and we're going to be talking about many things, all related to the stress, emotional regulation, how pop culture handles holidays, and recommendations for healthier coping skills and mechanisms for the struggles that we all face during this time.
During the holidays.
Yeah. And just, a forewarning, I've got a menagerie of drinks like this, a menagerie. Do you like my vocabulary today? I don't know.
Can I have a sip of that coffee?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Out of my ugly coffee cup. So, and then we're just going to be, we're clearly honest with you that we're getting ready for Christmas right now, or holidays, and being out of the studio, and
my last show.
Yeah. And everybody, I'm drinking out of a vase. So if you're not,
I don't have an apartment. You've kind of got four. My pale makeup is too pale for me. My nails look so bad that I'll be hiding them. I even tried to find a pair of extraneous
these are
mittens.
Cadillac problems.
What?
Wait, I shouldn't be measuring your problems and telling you that they are not valid because I'm sorry. Forgive me.
It's fine. I really you caught me on a great day. I told you this before we started recording. So we were talking about dealing with family and situation over the holidays. And I was like, you caught me on a great day because I just don't give a right now. And so we'll bleep it. And so I'm like, you're going to get the real version. I'm not going to talk too many specifics so I don't piss people off a week before Christmas, but I think I can give some very healthy, honest recommendations for what we're going to talk about. And it's coming from the smorgasbord of what's in our shared note.
Yes.
So if we're looking at our phones, that's why.
Don't worry. Yeah, we do have an outline. So we're not going to be we will be all over the place. But one thing I can promise is this is going to be a really great episode. I think that sometimes when we're a little less structured, some of the best stuff comes out. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I'm turning my phone on airplane mode. I agree. Well, we have conversations like this all the time, so this is right up our alley.
Right up our alley.
Okay, where are we starting?
So the holidays and mental health, and first, I think acknowledging that many people, whether you are around people and family, or you don't have anyone to spend the holiday with, feelings of loneliness are quite common because for many of us, we have stuff.
Yeah. Or you felt alone or isolated from some people already in a family system. So being around
That's what I mean,
people,
whether you're,
That's what you mean? Okay.
Well,
either
one. Loneliness doesn't only apply to those who don't have people around them, because you can be just as lonely in a dysfunctional family system where
sometimes
there's
highlights it even.
Yes.
You can be lonely amongst some in your family and very well seen by others. So hopefully there's enough people to balance it out.
Yeah.
But we are going to try to go through some coping mechanisms that could help if it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. The one that we have down here to talk about in relation to this is so important. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to friends. You mentioned family, but I would say that it needs to be a trusted support, somebody who really knows you. And I hope that you have that in your life.
I want to speak in as specific of terms as we can. So we paint a colorful picture. When it comes to loneliness, as you get up to the holidays, where does the theme of loneliness show up? And can you give us some examples of how you struggle with that? It's okay, it's about to be Thanksgiving. What are you struggling with? Whether it's loneliness or amongst other things. Give me specific examples of picturing yourself in those situations.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't mind airing out my family's dirty laundry, not really naming people, but just, this is it's my story. It's my truth. And I think that if it can help somebody, I'm
Whatever.
tired of protecting the family system that, but there's a lot surrounding the lack of acceptance of growing up in a extremely conservative Christian family that has not been able to accept my being gay fully.
You are fully gay, but they can't fully accept
Exactly. There's a very much of a love the sinner, hate the sin. You can come for these things. You can't, and it's, so our whole family dynamic, there's 25 of us from my parents down, between my siblings and then grandkids, great grandkids in the Middle Tennessee area. And we used to all get together and for everything, birthdays, holidays.
Till when?
Till
you came out?
I came out, started dating, and then people started taking sides. And, I would say that I'm fortunate to have a small faction of my family that has, been kind and loving and had included me and all of me and my significant other in family gatherings or come to, wherever we're going to go, do stuff together. But it has been extremely difficult because however many years ago that was, my gosh, that's a lot of years ago. Mm-hmm. 12.
Yeah. Because you got sober the year before you came out, right? Or that
I did.
They were happening
I did.
Yeah.
But
and you're 13.
The stuff in our family didn't start falling apart till I really, because I dated for a couple of years before I
was as public about it.
And it became an issue. Here's the thing. It becomes an issue for most families that reflect the same type of situation mine has, when you actually have somebody else in the picture, right? They're praying for you. They don't want you to be gay, yada, yada, whatever. But
why do you think it becomes a problem then?
Because when you bring a significant other around, the grandkids start asking, and nobody wants to. They don't want that quote unquote influence around the grandkids. So I'm just giving you some examples of the narratives that I received, and it's very hard because there's a lot of hypocrisy around that,
right?
Weighing sin, because there's a lot that you could match in our family that is, if you're going to look at that, at me being gay as a sin, you could look at that as some very similar other things that other people that doesn't get
in
out.
Their eyes should weigh as much.
Yes. Yeah. And should be excluded from the narrative. And so, I had, it looks like me I took some time, backing out, and some solitude where I wasn't participating really at all to figure out what healthy boundaries I needed to have respect for myself. Mm-hmm. And so, I've had to isolate a lot of my relationships with family members, meaning I do one-on-one.
Yeah.
because I know that they're the only family that I have, and I have figured out healthy ways that I can interact with those people. I don't mean to say those people like they're like not, but you know what I'm saying.
Interact with them.
Yes, interact with them. But those specific family members. And then, like I said, I've got here and with my immediate family, I've got one specific subsect that if we get together, that's who my partner and I do the holidays with.
Because
and
you're
so,
invited to, there's different tiers of invitations in your family. It's the fully invited to one or...
No, I'm fully invited to everything.
But you're not...
But my partner is not. And so that's what I mean when I say either all of me or none of me. Because for me, by the time if I'm in a relationship and my family knows the other person, like that, I'm in a serious enough place where that individual, should be included.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And why would you also, the person who's been, I know all relationships have up and downs, but has been very safe. Why would you hurt them to like...
I absolutely would not ever do that.
No.
And so it has been really difficult navigating how wrapping my mind around the family that I was raised with. It feels very counterintuitive. The moral compass that they've used, but I've had to accept
cherry
that.
picking.
It is cherry picking, but I wasn't used to. I didn't see that when I was being raised. So it's been something that I've had to, really like
Cope with.
Yeah, like grieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Accept.
Well, because you lose
all the stages.
I'll say that you lose when you have to limit access to somebody. A lot of times the interpretation of that is, whoever is being who is being iced out, which is probably the person who broke your boundaries. I'll just speak from like our situations. But it's like when you do have to draw a line there to say, hey, this isn't working for me like this, and I need to draw a boundary, or I need to stop communicating as much, or I'm not going to pick up the phone every time you call. I might not even call you back because I tried to tell you what was fair, what was working for me and what wasn't. And then when nothing about you changes, not you, but like them, then there's going to be hopefully like some kind of response from me that helps me protect myself. So, but what the last thing I'll say about that is that, but when you do that, when you are the one to stop communication or to take it down a level, what they don't realize is that you are still losing. You're like, I was losing when I was talking to you all the time because it was hurting me, or because you weren't really respecting my boundaries, or the way that you were loving me didn't feel like love to me. But then me like taking communication down a little bit is also me losing because I don't want to not talk to you as much.
Right.
Like I want my person or my family members or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think just remembering that, honoring that it's like you do have, it hurts twice.
Right. So in many cases, and I think most cases, no, I have to accept that I'm never going to have the people that have done those things acknowledge and say, I'm sorry that hurt you and you didn't get what you deserve as a human being from family. And also accept that the reality that it should look this way. It was this way.
Like already, you mean?
It was before.
Yeah, it already was.
And things have changed.
Yeah.
And so the hurt, let's just say like it's a journey. So the hurt of place A, where you are in existence, that you have to identify and accept, for me, which is, this is the reality that's just going to be like that. I'm not changing them. It is what it is. And it's extremely hurtful.
What did Dr. Romney say? Finish your thought.
Well, so I can either have healthy boundaries to mitigate and protect how much hurt continues to take place, or stay stuck in a place of feeling like, because that place A we all start out at is no, digging your heels in. No, it should be this way.
Yeah.
Why is it not? You da 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 da. But like, I'm not going to get anywhere for healing until I'm able to say, whoa, I got to step back to where I'm not even thinking about like how I should be responding to you, whether or not I'm respecting myself showing up. Like
not
for
expecting
me,
their behavior to.
Yes. So for me, it took like, I did not a complete, but almost, I would say like a 90% cutoff for about a year. And that was extremely difficult. But what I came back with was being able to identify with each particular, because it was a different scenario with each part of my family, you know, what was good and right and protected me the most with my interactions with them. And one of those things was, actually, I'm going to list all of the big ones off. Family text threads. I basically was like, I don't want to be a part of it anymore, because it's, you know, there's too much going on that I love you all, but I'd rather, you know, spend time with you one-on-one, and I would rather communicate with you one-on-one.
We should make sure to say it's okay to leave the family text thread.
Yes. It's okay to leave the family text thread, and you're not a bad person for doing that. And you're not too sensitive, and you're not the dramatic one, and you're not any of those things, because those are I could go on and on and on.
Unintentional. God, you just made me think of like 3 different things. When you talk about unintentional manipulation, like that, the word where you're dealing with people who are saying things that they don't realize are manipulative, because you don't think of them as being like an evil, manipulative, like crazy person, but like there are things that they're doing that are trying to make themselves more comfortable, or trying to change your behavior, which I think the word manipulative gets a bad rap, but it's oftentimes not, they don't realize they're doing it.
We're all constantly manipulating each other.
But the drama thing is like a good point to hit on. A lot of times, I mean, I can relate to that, like inside of a family system of, you know, if you're whistleblowing or you're trying to change behavior, which obviously isn't always healthy, or, you know, whatever. And being called dramatic is like a form of manipulation by people that just that you're making them uncomfortable. And so I think just being able to recognize, like, start paying attention to, if you can, when someone calls you a word, like stop and think about whether your best friend would agree. Or like, I think about whether, I mean, my brother's like one of my best friends, but I think about like, would Sean agree with that if someone called me that? And if that doesn't pass like the Sean, Tyler, for me, Ray Rod test or whatever, Rachel test, then it like, I'm starting to put it in other people's court and then just mentally imagining if they would agree with it or not. And then if they don't, then I don't have to call somebody out on the spot, but instead of internalizing it, I could be like, that passed my 3 people I care about the most test. So doesn't sit right anymore.
I would say too, in defense of, like, you know, implore each of you, for me is in my journey is learning how to stand up. And I know this is easier said than done, but getting to a place of standing up for yourself. So like in the moment, if you're being called out and said, let's just say you're at the family gathering and somebody says you're too sensitive, or, you know, comment about the drama, like being dramatic, sensitive, or even just being the one that voices the dysfunction. And, you know,
how do you respond personally?
I absolutely go straight to if that's too much for you, that's on you. My experience is genuine, and I'm showing up authentically here in this moment.
Right.
If what I've said hurts you, I would like to hear more about that, because, you know, it's not my intention to be harmful to anyone, but I also am not going to sit by and continue to participate in a conversation, scenario, situation, environment where I and my feelings are being devalued.
Yeah.
I have more respect for myself than that.
I like this. I like the way this is going because I think these might actually be very applicable tactics. And I know we're like a little bit off of our like crazy shared note, but there are really good, just like you just said, like that sounds like something you would say when you had someone pulled to the side, like once you did get them one-on-one in a scenario, like, hey, if I'm too much for you, like we can talk through that. Or, hey, I don't care if I'm too much for you or not. I'm not willing. I've tried to talk to you about it before and I'm not willing to go there. You can also stand your ground. But I think there's also ways when you're in a larger group that I've found work, and they often, the technique for me is often making them think about what they said and that be the last thing. Because if you're always the last one to have a word and you're terse, like even if you're totally right or your emotions are valid, they're going to be like, rare. You know, they're just kind of snapping back at you about you being emotional, but didn't pay any attention to what you said. So
Right.
one of my favorites is if someone says, whoa, here's the drama queen, or my God, Erin, that's so dramatic. Me just kind of taking a second, going like, that's interesting. That's interesting and stop really gets people, because it's like, people are kind of like, whoa, what did I just say? It makes them go back inward. I also love the not responding at all technique. And in certain situations, I think defending yourself is great. I'm also one to snap back and say, I'm actually not, I'm just telling the truth. And that's the difference. But the silence thing, and you'll know based on the person, because everyone knows their own family members if they're having to deal with them.
Sure.
So for some people, just kind of like, looking up from your plate, being like, not even really giving it the time of day.
Right.
Is a good technique too. And then when you can finally get them away, if you feel like it's worth having a conversation, say something like what you just said.
Well, and I love that we're talking about this too. How do you respond? Because it can feel like you're completely like you hear this conversation and you're like, yes, Erin, yes, Patrick, that sounds so good. I feel encouraged. I feel empowered. But then you get to the place where you're having that conversation with a family member and you're like, all I remember is that I'm not supposed to respond, or that I'm not going to engage. And so, but how do you do that? Because if you're anything like me, my brain goes to, okay, I can't just not, because not is like, I don't know how to just not. Like, there's a way to not.
Yeah, it's a personality difference.
So my not responding is, look, eye contact back and being like, or giving a nod like, I heard you.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
right, like, but
giving it some space after.
Exactly.
Power in the pause.
There's power in the. We talk about power of the pause in the interviews and Dr.
It's Gabor. But
is it Gabor the one who? Oh.
Yeah, he said the real freedom is between the stimuli and the response. So he's like, that's where you find freedom, is something happening, and then you realize that all your power and all your freedom to make a decision is in between when it happens and when you respond to it. Which I thought that was such a good way to put it. So if someone triggers you, someone says something to you, just know that that space between when you decide what you're going to say is all the options are on the table. So you get to pick. Like, it's really easy for us to snap back into those patterns, or snap back into being defensive, or snap back into being submissive, or snap back into just trying to appease a toxic person or people that are
let's just say this. When we all go back to our families, they're all dysfunctional. I don't care what you say. Every family, I don't know. What is a functional family? I don't know. For the most part, I have these conversations all the time and everybody says, yeah, I can fully identify with that. When I go back into my family, you want to see a really good picture that helps paint more of an individual so that you can understand them. Tag along with them on a visit, like a dinner or something, to go back and visit their nuclear family, because the way that they fit back into like it's like a suit we put, like it's like
so
going
much.
into a different environment that requires a specific type of hazmat suit or something. You suit up, it's invisible, and you don't actually, but like we all do it. We all do it. And I think the goal for me is that I do less of it, because the suit to me represents all of the unhealed, the me going back into the role that I played to fit into the cycle.
Yeah, what makes other people comfortable.
And so instead, replacing that unhealthy suit with coping mechanisms that I know are respectful to me, and they're also respectful to the other individual.
Yeah.
And I think it's so very important.
It is. And practice also makes you realize it's not going to kill you. So the way that you respond, whether it's defending yourself, whether it is not responding at all, whether it is being silent in the moment and then pulling someone aside and saying, hey, I know that I haven't really responded this way before, but like, I'm not really cool with the way that this interaction's going anymore. I'd love to be here, for opening presents, or I'd love to be here and stay for dinner. But if it continues to go this way, like, I will, in a non-dramatic fashion, just remove myself. So if they let you go, you have your answer. I mean, it's really, really hard, but if they continue to treat you that way, then sometimes you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is and just actually hold your ground. I will say that having some things already in place, so maybe whether you actually have an event after it or not, hey, I'll be there at 9 to open gifts like you asked me to. Love it. We'll have breakfast with you guys. And I'm actually going to go see my best friend and her kid around 1 or around 12:30. So here's the thing. If you decide not to go see your best friend, or you made the whole thing up, you've given yourself an out that you're like, I can make it for 3 hours. I can do it. And I am not dramatically storming out the front door when someone pisses me off. I have set my wall of time that I'm allotting to you. And then if you want to go see a movie with your significant other and you made up a friend from high school and just told your parents that they forgot about her and saying you're going to her house, that's fine. Like, I think there's ways to like set things in place if you feel like the confrontation is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to be there with you guys all day. We're only gonna be able to make it from about 3 to 6.
That's really good. It goes along with, and I'm going to go kind of like, and just read through instead of going back and forth of this, like from problem to solution, I'm going to read the problems and then go read through all the solutions, because I think that they're really like all along the lines of this. But one thing I did want to mention that is super helpful with the whole, when you're in a situation that's highly uncomfortable and someone feels like they're violating or being angry, and violating your boundaries, and you don't know what to say. It is always appropriate when you feel like you're backed against a corner to say, I don't have a response for you right now, and I need to think about what I want to say. So I'll get back to you when I've had some time to think about that, if I've got an appropriate response or answer.
And remembering that incorporating humor, like, it can always be adapted to your personality.
Sure.
So if that feels true for, like, that's probably is what you would say.
Yes.
Mine would be like, ooh, I'm gonna let that one simmer for a minute. I don't know how to respond. So using humor in a way to make things lighthearted, to where if you feel like people are gonna call you dramatic, they're gonna say you're storming off, like adding a dash of humor in there can really get your message across without coming across as this, well, I'm going because you're hurting me. And then you give all these toxic people ammo. I think doing that in a way that feels right for you, just throw a little personality on it and make it your own. That's
really good advice. I love having fun and being funny, and sometimes I forget to mix the two. I can be very black and white with that stuff.
There's a reason most comedians come from trauma. There's a direct line between trauma and comedy, but it can get you through a lot, and it can ease the tension a little bit if you just are too tired to have tension. You're like, I got to tell you that's crazy, but I don't have the energy to have a serious conversation. So you're like, oh damn, that was spicy.
That says it in a very succinct, yeah.
Yeah, and just let them sit with it. Keep going.
So here are some of the problems that we had identified here. Feeling lonely due to a strange family or lack of community, grieving lost loved ones during the sentimental time of year, overwhelming social obligations with little time to recharge, pressure to meet cultural or family expectations of a perfect holiday. And all of those just triggered the hell out of me. But I love these. I'm going to go straight to the solutions and let's reflect on them. Okay. So we already talked about this one a little bit, but reach out to friends or support groups to foster a sense of belonging. Now I'm going to read through all these and then we'll focus. Okay. 2, I love this one. Honor those who have passed with a special tradition or moment of remembrance. That's just, again, we'll go back to it in a second because I want to stop at all of these because they're just so good. Prioritize only the most meaningful events and allow yourself to say no. What? I'm going to read that one again. Prioritize only the most meaningful events and allow yourself to say no. The last one here is focus on creating new personal traditions that bring joy without pressure. And I think that one's like so open-ended.
Focus on creating new personal traditions. Oh yeah. That bring joy without pressure. I think that's one that is a lot harder to do. Can we work backwards now through them?
Yes. Okay. And I would like to say for me, what that says is that's an invitation that the tradition of whatever your holiday that you celebrate or holidays have looked like. It doesn't
have to stay that way.
You have permission to make new traditions, and you don't have to stay married to the fact that you having a successful, quote unquote, successful holiday or receiving what you need out of the holiday is all encompassed by checking off what has always been checked off.
Yeah. I think that this is an easier one to do as you get older. So when you're first coming home from college, you don't have the money to stay anywhere else and you got to go back to your childhood home, which for a lot of people is really difficult because even if you have, it's not like, I know that you and I both had a lot of there's good times in our childhood, but there's also something, my parents lived in the same house for, since I was 3 and I'm 35. So 32 years in the same house, you're going to associate memories with it. So as you get older, you have a little bit more money or liquidity, or maybe you have your own home and you can invite people into your home and make the rules. That one gets easier. But it is that the traditions is so important because it can kind of reframe it for you. So exactly what you said, you actually get out of it what you need. So last year we, stayed at the Peabody Hotel on Christmas night or Christmas Eve instead of staying at home because it was just like a new tradition. There's a hotel in Memphis where the ducks walk out and we went and, had dinner and then stayed there. So just trying to change it up a little bit and little by little, I feel like it ruffles feathers less if you can just kind of start easing in your own little things each year.
Most definitely. Right? And I think that just do
whatever you want.
Yeah, do what you want. Add something in, try it if you liked. If it worked, great. I've been practicing what feels good to me for ever since at the beginning of this episode. I mentioned my holidays have not been looking the same for a decade-ish now, and so I came off. Well, y'all might not know, but I came off of a 2023 I got divorced from a 10-year relationship. I mean, that was a big thing for me, and at the end of the year found someone who's very my now partner and
mi mejor amigo.
Yes, and he was new to town at the time, and it was a really kind of cool opportunity for me. I just was like, you know what? We're just going to spend He had no one here. He hadn't met friends yet and what have you. And it was the coolest thing to just do fun, sweet things that normally I wouldn't go do for Christmas, just because they're, just, it was like, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
The freedom and it not having to be the same. Yeah.
And a lot of people will probably meet resistance on that one, but I think that a really good way to talk yourself into doing what you want to do is to make a worst case scenario list. So let's just say very, very worst case scenario. I think my therapist taught me this a long time ago. Is okay, if I don't come to Christmas Eve, but I just come to Christmas Day because I want to do my own thing with my partner, I want to do my own thing with friends. What's the very worst thing that could happen? And writing it down, because that swimming around in your head is sometimes way worse than the actual outcome, because it just feels like this plethora of overwhelm. But if you just go to the very worst thing, okay, the very worst thing that could happen, very worst, let's just make one up, is that my mom calls me on the phone crying, and then my dad calls me. This is not the scenario for me. I'm making up a different one. I have one, but it's not this one. So then my dad calls me and, reams me out because I've made my mother cry, and how could I do this? And we just think it's better that you don't come to either. Okay. Can you handle that one? Can you handle worst case scenario? Your dad tells you, you made your mother cry. Can't believe you do that. You're a horrible person. Don't come tomorrow. And then if that's something that you're like, I think I'd be okay if they uninvited me to Christmas Day, which obviously that'd be very hard for anyone. But if you can take yourself and your worst is probably not that bad, but if you go to the very worst one and just, you're like, oh, I could do that if I had to, then it kind of gives you the bravery to maybe step into something like that is going to cause resistance.
Yep. That's great.
Just trying to be applicable. I love
very applicable. Okay, so prioritize only the most meaningful events and allow yourself to say no. I mean, that's self-explanatory and so empowering.
How do you do it though?
Oh, well, okay. Well, I have to define what are the most meaningful events, meaning so what's the most important and what's most meaningful to me within my realm of boundaries that are acceptable. And if it's not, I say no.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep. Go for it. Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of people feel the pressure that they have to have some type of excuse if they are saying no. And, I mean, your excuses can be, I'm doing something different for myself this year. You don't have to go into blaming people, being honest about your feelings about the dysfunctional system. If it doesn't feel safe, right? But you can literally just say, I'm doing some things different for myself, this year. And if you're pressured for more explanation, it is always appropriate to say, it feels very personal to me why I'm making this decision, and I would hope that you can just respect why this is this is important to me in the first place, and know that I care about you, and just respect my decision. Yeah. And if that's not the case and they keep pressuring, then you've just got the issue of you're not being respected. And at that point, it's completely acceptable to end the conversation and walk away or hang up the phone.
Yep. That is, you kind of went exactly where I was going to go, which is just that transparency and vulnerability is certainly not required in those situations. I will say sometimes it does make your life easier. It can afford you more grace to say, you know what, if it's a friend, I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to, if this is true, I would love to be with you guys on, do this friend, well, for most people listening to the podcast, hopefully not a bar crawl, but the traditions that your friends have where they're like, we should do this. I'd love to come to the tacky sweater party, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just kind of struggling with my family right now. And I feel like I've been mentally exhausted from being just at home. So would it screw up the numbers RSVP wise to just tell you I'm a maybe? Cause I don't want to show up if I'm I don't want to show up and like feel like I'm not myself. So I think if you can, you don't ever have to be vulnerable. Saying I'm not going to make it or I'm not sure is fine. But sometimes it does relieve anxiety for you to give people a little bit more, because then you can rest assured that they know that it's not, they're not going to go to the party and be like, Erin never comes to these parties anymore. She used to always be here. What's her deal? And like, they're not making something up. That's not true.
Yeah.
And so again, always fine to just not do that, but it can sometimes relieve anxiety to know that other people know what your reasoning is. It's easier to do with friends sometimes than it is with family.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then the other way I think is a good coping mechanism for not overcommitting is don't get in the heat of the moment and say yes when someone invites you to something.
Yes.
Just say,
this is good advice for 365.
I'm not going, I really am going to try to make it. Work's been stressful, if that's true, or if it's not, no one's going to know. I am really going to try to make it. Or, hey, we actually have another gathering at that time. Doesn't need to be true. Mm-hmm. But we are going to do our absolute best to be there. If we do come, we'll bring a dish. If we do come, do you need us to bring a dish? Just give them a maybe, because we get really pressured into saying yes at that first instinct of being a yes man, mm-hmm. being a yes woman. Maybe just be a maybe girly. And then if you are able to come, pleasant surprise.
So I love that. And I think there's different flavors for different people. I'll say for me, and I'm taking this to a broader, because I just got like real passionate about this topic in just like the year round. How do I survive and cope in this realm of, mm-hmm. of commitment? You and I have talked about how important this is for me in early sobriety. Like, so before getting sober, most of us, I would say, it's typical that we struggle to tell the truth, show up when we say we're going to. We can mean everything that's coming out of our mouth because we've got a good heart, but our ability to follow through is absolutely not backing it up. Mm-hmm. And so what that looked like for me, and I think many other people, is by the time I was getting sober, like my word meant nothing. I was never where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there, and nothing was done when it was supposed to be done. And so in recovery, building my life back together, like the core of what is so important to me is integrity and accountability. So like if I say that I'm going to do something, that I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I think initially there's this feeling, if you feel at all like you have done life wrong and you've effed up, mm-hmm. there's fear, guilt, and shame looming behind that, mm-hmm. and your everyday interactions with other people in the world that influence how I show up in a room, mm-hmm. how I respond when I'm asked to do something, because I feel like I owe it to not be bringing negative energy, to not be bringing being the person that doesn't show up, to not be the one who lied, to not be the one right. So I need to do all the opposite of all those things. When do you get out of debt for that? When you do enough work that you realize that is not that is not
your debt to pay.
Right? The debt to pay is a healthy level of understanding that as an adult, I need to weigh my integrity and let my word be my word, mm-hmm. and responsibly commit.
Yep.
I have to have the insight to be able to know what I feel, want, like, appreciate, desire, am okay with. Mm-hmm. And sometimes finding that takes some time. So that's where I would say that pause of, if someone's asking you to commit to anything, or even this is something that's your idea because you're having lunch and all of a sudden a plan starts to take place. If you're not at a place where you can positively identify what your level of, because I have levels. Mine is, I love this so much, I absolutely know 100% I want to do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm ready to pull the calendar out right now and make a plan, and I will stick to that. And I know myself enough now to know that category, I can identify it, and that one I'll be good to stick with. Then there's a lot that goes into the next category that you were really speaking to, which is being unsure. Because when you're really busy and or unsure just because of the dynamic, like you can't identify whether or not it's something that you feel comfortable following through with.
Yeah, maybe you love the idea of the event, but you don't know how you're going to feel because you will have been around your family for 3 days prior in your childhood home. So you might be really excited about the idea, but you just don't know what you're going to feel like.
There's so much pressure to give a response when a request is about any type of commitment, whether it's an answer about something like, again, we're talking about heightened emotions. We're talking about, if it's something that happened last Thanksgiving and it's coming up again now, or, hey, are you going to be sensitive and dramatic at this year's Christmas? I just need to know ahead of time. Or is it a commitment that we're talking about?
Yeah.
It is always okay for you to say, I'm not sure that I have the answer for you about that right now. I'm going to need to get back to you.
I can think of a good way to avoid being put on the spot, which is you don't ever have to answer a phone call if you don't want to. So if you know if you know that your aunt is toxic as hell, mine's not saying that, but she is going to call you. She always calls you about a week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out to tell you that you've got to come to her house at a certain time. Not answering those people's calls and sending them one of those texts. Hey, busy in the middle of something. Can you text me? Keep yourself out of being put on the spot if you need that. Some people can handle it fine, but force them to text you, email you, something that allows you more space than putting you on the phone and just putting you on the spot, if that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah. I am going to give another, because I feel like this is some good friends of mine. All these people don't live here and aren't connected. Like, you're not going to be able to figure out who this is. So I'm not breaking anyone's anonymity and I'm not naming names. So this story, though, is kind of, my jaw was dropping. So they were hosting, they're in their dream home that they got this year, hosting the family there for Christmas, parents, siblings, and both of these friends are sober because they need to be, just like me, live a life of recovery. And they have a dry house. Everybody has different feelings around that. I specifically don't, just saying, like, I don't have any issue around being around alcohol. For me, it's not a thing.
You're very fortunate and wired a certain way, and you haven't struggled with relapsing.
The other part is, many people I know that don't struggle with relapse or feelings around wanting to relapse, they have a lot of triggers and negative feelings around people drinking or just having alcohol in their home or in their space. And so that's where it's, thyself,
Yep.
And so I love these friends dearly, and they've got, they've identified an important, healthy boundary for them, and that's that their house is a dry house, and their whole family knows this. And they found out like 2 weeks ago, so barely before Christmas, right, that their family is decided that they're going to come for Christmas and basically do the exercise of, quote unquote, doing Christmas, but they're doing like a real Christmas after that, where everybody's going to go, because their specific family members wanted to be able to drink, and it just wasn't Christmas without being able to.
Well, were they invited to that one?
Yes. But for them, they were like, this is like, it's so, they felt belittled, and they felt like it was beyond for them. It hurt them so much, because it was like, we're gonna come, and we're gonna go through the motions, but like, our real family Christmas is still, we're just gonna delay it, basically.
Did they call it the real one, or was it just a secondary one?
Well, I think they said, like, we're gonna do like Christmas.
I think calling it, that part of the story that probably makes that the most hurtful for them is calling it the real one, or Christmas.
Yep.
Because you can have two Christmases and be like, we're going to do one here, then we're going to do one here. Now, I'm sure everybody wishes that.
But like, so they were coming and they're going to spend time, they're going to do whatever. But I think that like they're all going to get together and open presents and and have the wine and do the drinks and all that stuff. So,
and they put together all this effort to host.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when they talked through it, they were at a crossroads of, this is really hurtful. And like, are we being too dramatic? Is it, within our right? Of course it's within your right. It's your home.
Yeah.
But, they came to the conclusion that it was just like, it's going to feel icky to have everybody come knowing that they don't really want to be there over Christmas because they're not celebrating the way that they want to. Mm-hmm. And so they made the call and said, hey, you know what? And this was their first year to not be a family. So I was able to be a support for them in a way, because that is like super, like we said earlier, it can be super traumatic for people to experience that feeling of loneliness for the first time, because it's different than what you've always known.
Yeah.
And, but they identified what they could deal with, and they were like, we're going to go somewhere, just the two of us, and do something new. I think they're going to a South American country.
Totally fine.
I love that, and, but that was a huge milestone for both of them, because, when you're able to say, love y'all, but no, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And, we'll catch. I don't know what was said on the
prevented too by just like there being a little bit more transparency on the front end. So instead of this planned behind our back separate Christmas, having a conversation and being
it's all the levels.
Yeah, it's just like be transparent and say, we love you guys and we thank you for hosting. Like, here's what's actually going on. Like, people are having hesitation because someone wants to bring all the wine that they got in South America and have everyone taste it, or what. I don't know. It's like, just have the conversation with. And don't plan a whole separate
Well,
Christmas.
I think too like when you talk about dysfunctional family systems, I'm gonna say one bit that identifies some problematic behaviors more. It's like, okay, you have parents that are unwilling. They're like, we don't want to open, like, we want to be able to drink while we're opening presents because we've always done that. And that's what, there's like, I'm not going to put my view of a drinking problem or not, but like,
yeah, you're like, this is already, you don't have to say it. I don't know who you're talking about.
But that's hurtful in and of itself. Just being like, you're
part of the dysfunction was this to begin with.
Yeah. The alcohol tore my life apart and tore my husband's life apart, and that, and you've watched as I've piece by piece put my life back together, and now I'm an extremely adult, and you
can't give it up for
that there's all kinds of levels of hurt that are involved there.
And so supportive parent,
real life story of just like, hurt that can happen and exists, and it's at all different levels, because I caught myself wanting to be like, listen, and I had to reframe how I was talking, because it's easy to go and like measure again, like we were talking about at the beginning, measure like trauma or the hard part that you've been through, because my first response was, oh, well, I've been going through this for years. Let me tell you how much more extreme my rejection, but meaning like I can empathize fully and wholeheartedly, but instead I needed to use my emotional intelligence to identify that this is the first time these people are experiencing any level of this. Mm-hmm. And so for them, it is
tragic.
Mm-hmm. It's tragic. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Death of a tradition that feels like it encapsulates a year being a successful year because it is how it's always been. Like, that's a trauma.
Right. Also, what kind of achievement is it for most families to say, this is successful because it's just like all the years prior. Like we talk about how every family is dysfunctional. Like, should we really be,
Yep.
do we really all need to be celebrating like that this year was just like the last? Like, I'm trying to change a few things.
Yes.
So just having it in the back of your head that tradition and stuff like that is very much protected because, again, just like most things that are protected in dysfunctional family systems or any system, is comfortability, like people being comfortable.
Yeah.
And repetition makes people comfortable. So if you disrupt any sort of repetition, any sort of tradition, you're going to be met with resistance.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably always going to be true.
Yep. So going from the don'ts to the do's and the solution, love this one so very much. Honor those who've passed with a special tradition or moment of remembrance. Can I tell you that I feel like by the time you're our age, you definitely have people who've passed during the holidays. So there is, or negative things you could look back on. I think that like the longer you live, the chances are like at some point you're going to start gathering up stuff that's easy to come up at the holidays, because anything bad that happens during this time of year it's a mark. It's going to be there. And so, I think that, flipping that on its head is like, do you still need to grieve if you have feelings of sorrow? Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And do you leave it there? You can, but I love this recommendation that is figure out a way that you can create a positive tradition of honoring the person, whether it's talking about, things that you remember, or creating, scrapbooking memories about the person or stuff that they loved, or, there are all kinds of things that you could do to be creative, but just setting aside some time to.
Yeah. I think that's really that's a really, really good one. And I was trying to think of creative ways that people could do that. Maybe each year you add that special person, like add your grandfather into the Secret Santa and let one person be in charge of buying a gift that's from him, something like he would buy. And then putting it into the Secret Santa. So when you get it, you feel like it's them. I just was thinking about my grandfather and I was like, that'd be cool if like a gift came from LJ. So this year I'm responsible for buying it, but next year you're responsible for buying it. So you just buy whatever he would buy.
That almost made me cry.
Oh, like he would always buy wooden, he loves a wooden spool. Like you could make it funny, like just something that's very them. So like you feel like they're there.
That's so sweet. And very creative. I love that. Erin, y'all did not, she came up with that on the spot.
My brain's wild.
Beautiful. It is very
wild.
wild.
Not always beautiful, but I can think of a couple things.
Broken is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go through the next problem set of emotional regulation during the holiday season, y'all. This is where the money's at.
Can we do one more?
Emotional regulation. Wait, what?
Can we do one more honoring family member?
Yes.
I think just to leave the note I've lost a bunch of people in my life. I know you've had experienced some loss too. And it sometimes is scary to bring it up, but I promise you, if you're thinking about it, somebody else is too. And so it can really be a relief to know that you're not the only one thinking or sad or suffering through it. Yeah. So I think a lot. I'm doing too much thinking. It can be taboo to bring up something because you don't want to shake the boat. You don't want to upset people. But if it's a really close family member, people are already thinking about them. People are already sad that they're not there. You're not the only one who notices. So if you need to talk about it or bring it up, whether it's in like a funny, just way of remembering them, or you're crying and you're like, I'm struggling because I miss them. There's nothing wrong with that. And everybody else is thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So I just think that's important to remember.
Yeah.
Okay. And then emotional regulation.
Yeah. So emotional regulation during the holidays, stress. So I love talking about emotional regulation because unless you've been in clinical circles or in therapy or whatever, it's not something. Emotional regulation is not talked about in mainstream culture, but it's so important. It's so important. And being able to identify like what and how we do that when it's needed. How do I get emotionally dysregulated? Do I know myself enough to know when and how I'm getting, or I'm already at the place of emotional dysregulation?
And when to remove yourself from situations.
That's a solution.
True.
Okay. So,
This
and we're
is
going to get to
awareness
those,
you're talking
but
about.
awareness. And I mean, because it starts with, if you're not aware,
You can't
that
remove yourself if you don't
and
know.
you can't even participate in a solution.
Or it's too late once you figure it out.
Yeah. And so these are the problems that we're going to talk about, or at least start with, under this category: arguments or unresolved tension and resurfacing at family gatherings. Number 2, anxiety about interacting with critical or judgmental relatives. Number 3, feeling overwhelmed by crowded, noisy environments. Hypersensitivity to sound. I'm adding that in there. As I've gotten older, goodness gracious. Number 4, sudden emotional outbursts caused by stress or fatigue. Number 5, self-critical thought or feelings of inadequacy compared to others. Okay, so these solutions, I think, are phenomenal. I love every single one of them, and I actually, these are all they're not in here because they're Patrick's toolkit, but I do use them, and I'm excited to talk about them. So number 1 is the box breathing. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Do you want to do, I do know what box breathing is, and
Yes.
I love to use it. I could use breathing more. Do you want to talk so that people can do it in sequential order?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about tools to gain awareness first and then talk about how to cope? Like, what are some things that you know that make you aware of if you're coming up on emotional dysregulation? Like for me, I try to look, if I'm at a family gathering, I'll try to get in front of a mirror as much as I can, because my face will get flushed and my chest will get flushed, and I have, some dissociative tendencies. So I have to get eyes back on myself to know, because I'll have physical signs before I feel it emotionally. Do you have things like that help you identify, okay, I'm on the way to getting really upset or to being very dysregulated? Like, what tools do you use to help identify if you're heading that way?
My general disposition is a lot more like I'm not a reactor. And so when I get emotionally dysregulated, it is into a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it's not ahead of time. Obviously, if I know going into something that I'm going to have to be around, I'm choosing to allow myself to be around family members that are triggering to me. I know that potential is there.
You also are more aware about what yours are than some people are.
Well, that's the thing, is where am I willing to go? Mm-hmm. What am I willing to sit and literally listen to? Mm-hmm. My boundaries, I'm not going to sit and listen to language that is derogatory to my life choices.
Yeah, the queer community, anything.
Who I am as a human being, who I was born as. I've made it clear to my family that politics is off the table. If I'm going to be present, they can do what they want, and I do not want to control I'm not trying to control other people, but my boundary is that I'm not going to be present on the phone or in person for political discourse. Mm-hmm.
And if it never ends well.
It's never ended well for...
No. And for a lot of families, it doesn't.
You know how long it took me to realize it never ends well is true for me 100%, because at least half of the percentile of times, the never ending well is defined by the other person or people get to say all they want. And I choose not to respond because I'm not interested. I'm not going to change their mind.
Right.
And I'm not going to waste, or I'm not going to go there. And I don't want to argue.
Yeah, no.
So I walk away feeling like somebody just dumped garbage down my throat.
Yeah.
And so that counts as ending poorly. In my brain, ending poorly would be equated as a fight and then nobody's talking afterwards, or a fight and nobody apologizes and it's just unresolved. No, ending poorly also means that you're the one on the receiving end that just chooses to be the bigger person and not say anything.
Yeah.
And because you want to preserve the peace and you're not wanting to get into a place that has no promise of doing any momentum of relationship building, changing perspectives of things you're passionate about. Like, there is not a point. And that's where I'm at with the politics side of things. And you know, I know that some people that may share political views with me, or wherever you are on the political spectrum, everybody's passionate about your views. Especially right now, everybody is so driven on both sides or on all sides. And I personally, listen, I am super passionate about the things and the way that my viewpoints and the ways that I believe, but not so much to say that like it can't, I will not change my family. I have let go of that. And I really don't think anybody is.
No, you're not going to. And so you have to know like when to get out. And I know what you're saying. I want to make sure we come back to what you're saying about just because you're preserving the peace. Okay, so maybe you aren't lashing out. Maybe you're not coming back and being like, you're an effing idiot. Like, that's not true. Like, you're talking about me a certain way. Like, that's BS. You're not doing that. But you are sitting there and taking it for a long period of time.
Right.
So knowing that, like, when you leave, if people haven't done as much work as you have, or maybe me, which we both have a long way to go, but, or at least I do, but we have done therapy a lot. So we have language around it. We have tools around it. So I know, you know, we have recognition that I can tell in the moment, or when I started developing awareness around what was bothering me, because so many of us are dissociative. So you just got through it. That's how you dealt with childhood.
Sure.
And then you just arrive and you're like, no, I'm good. Nothing bothers me, but your face is flushing. It's like, are you? But what mine is like, if I feel myself sitting there and I'm like, it's like almost like my body wants to like, I don't know about get up, but it's like, I think my chest is just tight. So I feel myself like kind of wanting to get out of my seat, and that will happen before I really have the cognitive awareness that something's bothering me. So just starting to recognize like where it is in your body, like if you feel it in your throat, like, is there something that you weren't allowed to say? Like, doesn't mean you have to act on it. Just might be a good clue of like what exactly is bothering you. A really good way to get out of those from a very just tactful standpoint. A lot of these conversations happen if your family drinks, as you continue to drink more. Is it after dinner? Have people had wine? Even if it's not an alcoholic meal, or a meal that it serves alcohol, or you're drinking together, people get more and more comfortable as the night goes on. So sometimes those conversations often happen as the plates are done at the dinner table. People are feeling lax, and then get up. And if you don't want to be in it, great way. Hey, mom, do you need help with the dishes? Get your ass out of there. That's a really good way to not look like you're being dramatic. You're not walking away from anything. You're just being helpful.
Or go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom and then find your way to a different room until something's changed. If you feel comfortable staying. I also think that's important going into a situation, being prepared that if you need an exit plan, you're going to execute that exit plan. Okay,
so you start to trust yourself to get out.
Yes.
Yeah. Or say whatever you want at the table. That's also an option. But just know that, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to get up and subtly get away because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If you want to say something back to people, you can. I just wouldn't go into it with the expectation that you're going to shift anyone's viewpoint.
That's right. So I don't know. I wanted to wrap up my political thing.
Oh yeah, do it.
That like, I have talked about this with so many friends, and because it is, for me, it has saved so much of and preserved so much of my peace that I have fought for. Because I thought for so long I owed it to my parents or to other people who are older than me, or who have a power differential with me, to be reverent or sit and listen or whatever. No, I don't. You don't. You do not owe that to anyone. And so identifying that boundary and just saying, again, I'm not trying to control, be dramatic or anything, but in this, I had to have this conversation multiple times to reinforce it, because it was a big change for a lot of them. I'm the only one, my whole entire family basically shares the same political views.
Except for you.
I'm the black sheep. So they're all so used to either making the same jokes or, comments or viewpoints. Can you believe blah, 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 whatever, right? And they don't think twice. So reinforcing this and saying, hey, I'm not trying to control you all, but we believe differently about many things. And I would hope that we feel strongly enough about family connection that we can say that prioritizing the time that we have together is important, and that there's enough outside of politics that we can focus on.
Yeah. And
because I love y'all, and that's what I want to talk about, because I feel like that brings us together and is actually going to nourish and grow our relationship.
Yeah.
When I've come at it from that language, every time the person I'm having that conversation with agrees with me. That's great. Right? But it's having to reinforce that and be like, hey, like, just so you know, like, you can, if you're going to continue, cool. Just like, but if that's the case, I'm going to, I'll see you later. Or I'm going to hop off the phone. Yeah. But I think that a lot of people could use some freedom there, because there's a lot of bondage where people feel like they owe it to the people above them to sit under that. And you don't. I mean, yeah, unless no, not really, unless anything. I was going to make a joke about having someone, if someone on the Supreme Court was sitting at my family table and they're related to me, and I had questions, like, maybe I'd entertain the idea, but I'm not about to listen to anybody that doesn't know anything about we don't know what's going on in the world. Let's just be honest. We're all getting it from faulty news sources. So I certainly don't want to hear about your second degree take from a source that we're not even really sure what's happening. So I don't even, some people in my family, I don't really like their normal take. So I certainly don't want their interpretation of a news station. Yeah. And that's on something. I don't know what it is. It is. Okay. So now we've talked about some ways to identify emotional dysregulations. Yep. Let's talk about solutions. So the box breathing, for those of you who don't know, it's first of all, the breathing techniques. Listen, I work in mental health, and for so many years I was like, oh, breathing. Okay. That's great for other people. Didn't jump on board until, for some reason, I was like forced into a situation where I had to participate and like did it. And then I was like, oh, I actually feel different. There's something to this. Yeah. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that, but just take it from me. Don't be a stubborn ass and try it. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, this can work. So it's you inhale for 4. It's easy because it's 4, 4, 4. You inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then pause for 4 seconds. And do that until you find yourself at a place of peace or more peace. Yep. The goal should be shifting. I love that saying. It's, seek peace within the storm rather than freedom from the storm. Because freedom from is, in many cases, just not possible. But peace is a really great thing that we can find. So if I'm seeking peace, finding that place and like getting comfortable. I hate the word comfortable, because it's not always comfortable, but like peace where my feet are. Yeah. Peace doesn't equate to comfort for me, because sometimes I can be super uncomfortable, but have peace in the place of discomfort that I'm in. Like, you can sit in chaos and know you're going to be all right. Yes. And that's a Navy SEAL. I think that's something in Navy SEALs use, because it actually triggers to your autonomic nervous system that it really is okay. You can also do a double inhale and exhale. There's something about that tells your nervous system you're okay too. There's a lot of good podcasts that give tips on this. Andrew Huberman's podcast is really good about giving tactful ways. I can't think of anywhere but tactful today, but things that you can actually
enlist like real techniques to kind of calm your nerves. Lots of good resources on that.
I love that.
We can put some in the show notes too.
Yes. Write a pre-event journal entry about entry to process your worries and identify coping strategies that you think or know are good for you and or have worked in the past.
Kind of like the worst case scenario thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And then also adding some coping on top of it.
Yes.
Of like, if this goes horribly awry, here's what it's going to look like. And just knowing that makes it easier to deal with. And then what you're going to do to cope. Can I have some of your water?
You can. Here's my flower vase.
Thank you.
So if you're listening to a podcast, chances are you're not the young generation that still has all their perfect memory intact. Meaning, it's so easy to sit and be like, I'm prepared. I'm thinking of all the things yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Write it down or put it in your notes app. Like, because the minute that you get emotionally triggered or whatever, it all goes out the window. And there's something too, especially writing something down that like etches it into your awareness.
Yeah. And give you, I don't know, maybe it doesn't give you control over it because that's not the point, but it does make it more tangible. The web is the worst place.
Yes.
The thing that you can't, I don't know.
Okay, speaking of if you catch yourself in a web, it says use a grounding technique such as the 5 things. It's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I am a very liberal, meaning like, and I don't think that you have to do it this way. You go through the 5 senses basically. So it doesn't matter if you go in the order of how many of which thing, but this says like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 that you can taste. And I would just say like, just go like whatever senses you could, like pick whichever one and go to the next, go 5, 4, 3. The point is to get your nervous system focused on a task that is not the one that is overloading us.
And not one that is either in the past or the future, making it out of control.
Yep.
Just like focusing on now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can even do, if that feels like cheesy to you, I'm like, I have a really hard time with it. That's not cheesy at all. But for some reason, me telling myself the date, like it's December 24th, 2024. My name is blank. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm in this part of the city. Feels like this outside. Like if that feels better for you, just telling yourself exactly where you are, what day, what it feels like outside, what your name is, it has the exact same effects, whichever one feels better.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this out. Listen, they do not sponsor us. I would love for them to. However, we don't have sponsors on our show, so you can't sponsor us.
You can still
send us free stuff. But I also love supporting this organization, Madison and Green. There's this bunch of, they put a lot of research into defining all of their little inhaler jars. If you're watching, you can see I carry one of these. They're different shapes and sizes for different things, but they use smell. Like the bottom half of it is, I don't even know how to describe. It's like, it's not even cloves, but it's like all natural, like herbs and stuff in the bottom and cotton, and then a layer of like bamboo that holds it all in. I love how it's set up. It is very potent, and it's meant for you to inhale in times of just needing to relax, bring yourself back to where you are. If your mind is racing, slow it down. If you're worried about stuff in the future, bring you back to now. If you can't stop focusing on whatever in the past, bringing us back to now. And the whole thing about smells really work for me. And I struggle with, I have that lovely intersectionality of panic, anxiety, and ADHD.
I love that for you.
Wait, I don't have the H. I have to quantify.
ADD.
Qualify. ADD, yes. I wish I had the hyper.
That would be me.
But yeah. And so I catch myself all day long needing to yank myself back to where my feet are.
Yeah. It's the age old same concept as in a movie or in life when someone's disoriented and they're like, whoa, and they're grabbing onto a wall. It's the same thing. It's just, where am I? Where, like, what am I touching? I need something tactile. It's the exact same concept. So like little tricks like that are great.
Yeah.
This is on our list, and I love this. I think you put this down there, which was taking a break during certain activities or like family gatherings. I think it might be really good, now that I'm reading that one, to pre-plan those so that it's not this marathon to be like, how long can I make it? How long can I make it? Can I suffer through this? Like, maybe just tell yourself that no matter what, if you get there at 5, at 7:30 or 8, you're stepping out. If it's not 2 degrees outside, or, you know, if you have access to a car at your family gathering, that's always great. Walgreens is open on Christmas. If you need to like just get out of the house and go do something, you also don't have to tell anyone. No one, like, I don't know about y'all's family, but if I'm gone for 20 minutes, no one's going to notice. Maybe that's trauma too, but it is very helpful in this situation because it just can give you a break. But I think planning that so that you're not fighting this battle with yourself to be like, how strong am I? How long can I make it? Like, it's not about strength. Just tell yourself you're getting out of the house at 7:30 and do it so that you know it's coming. You're not like...
I think there's a lot of, whether you're one of the moms, whether you're the matriarch or one of the, like, the kids' wives, and I, not to like put gender into this, but I do feel like the feminine roles tend to feel the pressure more of the what to do, what conversations need to be, who needs to be talked to, like what acts of service need to be done, what stuff needs to get where, and yada, yada, yada. And so I know that there is a common feeling of, okay, there's this chunk of time, we're all going to be there. And when we get there, it starts. And whether it's a feeling of disassociation or running a marathon, or what it feels like is that, you know, you may not be one of those people that says, well, I have a dysfunctional family situation that I am worried about the conversation that's going to take place or whatever. But the feelings of being overwhelmed to the point where I feel dysregulated, and what I'm feeling, like, I don't put any mind to it because all this other stuff has to take precedence. Well, let me tell you, it does not. When you said take a break, I'm thinking, I immediately started to think about like my precious sister-in-law who has 6 kids.
1 million.
And I watched
6 kids is 1 million kids.
And I've just watched her be like, I watched her for many years not take a break, and then all of a sudden realize like, whoa, my piece is like, I'm not sacrificing this anymore. And she's very Irish, so it's funny because she would do the Irish break or the Irish goodbye.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
totally. I am too. Maybe that's why I can do.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that too, that like, if you don't have the level of like dysfunction and trauma in your family,
people are tired.
People are tired, and there's so much in the way of like talking about tradition, talking about how things have been before, and expectation. It's dysfunctional to think that you've got to show up for 12 hours and be on the whole time, and that you don't deserve a break. And
there's also ways that you can hold space. All that's totally true. And there's ways that if you're that person, you can create space, or if you are the son or daughter or husband of that person or wife of that person, the matriarch or whoever's hosting, that you can help implement some things for them. So we do, if you cook, you don't clean. If you cook, you don't clean. Like, if you are in charge of making dishes, you are not cleaning the kitchen, get out of the kitchen, go do something else. Like, there's ways that you can kind of step up for them. It might make them feel cared for. They try to get up after dinner. Like, nope. Our new rule is if you cook, you don't clean.
I love that.
Or if you pre-clean, you don't post-clean. Whatever you want to do that makes sense, because she's going to go, she or he, doesn't necessarily have to be her, is going to go right back in to the kitchen, and they are going to start loading the dishwasher and doing all those things. If you're the person that is stuck with no break, I'm not promoting lying, although I have said a few times on this show, like, you can make something up, because it's baby steps, kind of. Baby steps. I hope that one day people are able to say, and I can't always do this either. Hey, I need a break. I need a little preventative, trying to prevent a mentee B 5-minute break or whatever. But if that doesn't feel comfortable enough yet, jump in the car and then text your, the person who has the most communication with the family. If you're the matriarch and your oldest daughter's still in the kitchen, or tell her, jump in the car and say, hey, if anyone asks, I went to go get ice. Just get out of there. I needed to get out of there fast. And so just tell them after. Send a text after, hey guys, ran out because I didn't want to hold up dinner. I forgot something for a dish. Then eventually you can work your way to, I need a minute. Mom needs a minute. And then get yourself out. But if you need to ease into it, I think that's a good way of, you can forget the ice on purpose and need to go to Walgreens or Exxon real quick. And then just do it. And don't make it a thing. Just text once you get in the car. I'll be right back.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit, but this all kind of flows together, healthy interactions and boundaries with family. So identifying the problems first that some people experience, family members pushing boundaries despite prior discussions.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, always.
Feeling guilted into attending events that you'd rather skip.
Yep.
Being dragged into political or religious debates at the table.
We already did that one. Hit that hard already.
Overextending yourself to please everyone at the expense of your well-being. No, ma'am.
Yep.
No, that is old behavior. We're not doing that anymore. Feeling pressure to explain or defend your recovery journey, whatever that looks like. Not necessarily talking about addiction, or if you've never even been to therapy before. When we're talking about a recovery journey, identifying old ways that weren't serving you, that weren't healthy, and evolving to having new, healthier ways that protect you. That is a form of recovery. Totally. And trying to stick to that to protect yourself. So
what does this look like for you?
Oh, I could go on. I feel like I will go on to 50 minutes of explaining what it looks like for me. So I want to go to, I love this list. And then I think we could, maybe you and I could both
touch
give
on
a couple examples.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one talks about using I statements like, I am not comfortable with that topic. Let's talk about something else. So great. You can expound on that all you want, because it's just, you can use that everywhere. Plan a specific arrival and departure time to maintain control of your schedule.
Talked about that one.
Yes. Redirect heated conversations with humor or neutral topic. Example, what's everyone's favorite holiday memory?
You can make this funny and cheesy too.
You sure can.
You're someone's way down a political rabbit hole or making you feel bad about yourself. You're like, okay, what's everybody's favorite anything? And then just kind of, you can make it a thing.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to understand the sentiment, and probably 80% of them are going to want out of it too.
Yep.
It's normally a small group that's really in it just to argue, or in it just to create heated conversations for no reason. So I think humor is a great tactic for that one.
It is.
Or eek, gotta go. And just scoot yourself away from the table and literally say that.
I'm a big fan of just standing up and not using words, but sound effects to describe what you're doing to escape.
Yeah. Yeah. Walks away. Yeah.
Butching.
Yeah. 100%. Figurative door slam.
Yeah.
Nothing like the audible door impression. Slamming of a door. I love that.
It's so true. Oh, share only what you feel comfortable. Share only what you feel comfortable about sharing with your recovery journey, or politely decline by saying, I'd rather focus on the present moment. Again, I'd say replace recovery journey with anything. When we're going into these situations with people that we haven't spent time with, maybe all year, or maybe in a couple years, questions get asked about different parts of your life that many of us aren't, it's more intimate than we're, the emotional collateral, emotional and personal life collateral is not a currency that you owe anyone.
No.
You don't.
Yeah.
And so again, I think that exercising your right to say, I'd rather not talk about that, or, I'd rather talk about something different.
Yeah.
I understand that telling someone you'd rather not talk about that also says to them, if I'm talking to you, Erin, and you ask me about something and I say, Erin, I'd rather not talk about that. That also communicates to you that you make me feel uncomfortable talking about that subject. in turn, I feel uncomfortable and unsure about the unknown of what you're going to do by me telling you that you're making me feel uncomfortable.
Once you get up or whatever.
It's scary. So there are other ways. That's why I'm saying there's other ways if you need to say, you know, I'd feel better if we talked about, you know, could we talk about maybe something different?
Yeah.
And give a suggestion.
Yeah. I mean, you can make that, you know, lighthearted as well and say, I am, you know, can we do this one tomorrow? Even if you're not going to do it, can we do this one tomorrow because I'm just not up for it, or just give a later date? Or even I love to turn questions that have nothing to do with truth or dare into truth or dare. So someone asks me something and I'm like, ooh, dare. Just turn it into truth or dare. And that's a really good, funny way, if that feels more like your personality,
that
to say,
is really funny.
I'll pick the other one, whatever it is, because I don't really want to talk about this.
I'm going to start using that on you.
Yeah. Turning truth or dare into turning a question into truth or dare, even when it's not.
Yeah.
It'll probably take your slow family members a second to catch on, but that's all right. It's not the first time that's been the case for them. But yeah, just getting yourself, the change is the hardest part. So things that you used to be willing to do, boundaries that you used to let be crossed, there's going to be resistance by any time you change. That's why the phrase, oh, you've changed, is such a thing. Which my normal response is like, oh my gosh, thanks.
Yeah.
Because why would I not want that? Like, that's what I'm trying to do. So just know that it's coming. Resistance is coming when you make changes, and that try to interpret it as a sign that you're on the right path, not as a discouraging one, because it's going to come as soon as you do something different, which is probably going to be healthier for you. You're standing up for yourself. You're going to be met with resistance. So maybe try to interpret it as a good sign, even though it kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, bringing it full circle. The beginning of just like, okay, well, so do you want the pain of what exists right now, or the pain of respecting yourself and having a boundary? You know, it's because we're not going back to what
both hurt,
you're idealizing.
So pick the better one.
Yeah. Let's skip ahead to, because we've had so much great dialogue there. Let's go to section 5, and talk about the do's and don'ts for a healthy holiday in recovery. So we've talked about this before. Plan ahead. Arrange your own transportation to leave gatherings early if need be. I'm a big fan of that one. Mm-hmm. Stay connected. Call or text a sponsor, therapist, friend before going to an event that potentially
it's going to be triggering for you.
Celebrate milestones. Acknowledge personal achievements, big or small, during the season. This is a really big one because so many people have a hard time, like we've said over and over and over through this episode, having the insight to stop and look at, like, just try one thing and implement that. That's a victory if you were able to do it. Mm-hmm. But also look back and see if you've been able to, if there's anything that you've already been able to do better this year than you did last year. Mm-hmm. And that may not be the case for people. So if you're starting from a baseline now, that's okay. So go at it from the excited perspective of, I don't want things to stay the same. So I'm going to start small and try and implement these 1, 2, or 3 things. And when you're able to do it, celebrate that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yep.
Absolutely.
No further questions on that one.
Stick to routines. Maintain consistency in meals, sleep, and exercise. So important. For me,
you have to. I'm not as good about the sleep part, but
or the eating.
God, I was never good at the sleep part. I used to be really good at the eating and the exercise. I would always step out during family events or before them, be like, I have to run before this and get it out.
I'm a bigger person, and y'all, like, we'll do anyway. Erin and I will be on a filming trip somewhere and, it'll be 2 p.m., which I normally eat lunch at 11. And I'm like, my lungs are starting to give out and I'm like, we need food before we do anything else. And Erin's like, oh, you're hungry? But like
too many meals. Yeah.
My metabolism is crazy, and I'm a bigger guy. Like I need more food and more regularly.
It's good practice for everyone.
I think so too. And if I don't have regular meals, it just the sleep, it's so important. And I think there's this tendency when we go home or go anywhere on a holiday to be like, I'm on holiday, routine isn't important. Or I can let this go. I have a pass.
Might be probably more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're good at implementing a lot of these. One of your boundaries is that you drive everywhere. Mm-hmm. That is you can get out when you need to. You are always driving. And it's not just because you've been sober for 13 years. It's because you also want to know that you're good. You want to know that the people you're with are good, that you have a ride. So that's one way that you've always kind of maintained that feeling of control in a healthy way.
Yeah.
An escape plan is good. Like if you're able to use your family's car, like just know where the keys are to the family car if you need to get fresh air.
And let me reframe, not that you said it wrong, but I think sometimes people hear the word control and it might be so I don't necessarily think that, but I would say that maintaining your agency.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Autonomy.
Your autonomy to make choices and execute them.
Yep.
And I mean, ultimately, is that control? Yes, but not in a bad way.
Control makes it sound negative.
It's using the things that should be, should be your right.
Yeah.
To be able to exercise that. For many years, so many of us have let fly and let loose because it's just what the family all does. Right. So and so else drives, or nobody has a car, or like we're all there because we carpooled or whatever.
Yeah, we don't need a car. Let's all ride together.
Mm-hmm. And
no.
So let's challenge the status quo that's been what it is in the system for so long.
Not a lot of Ubers and stuff on these holidays too. So it's just a good thing to think through if you feel like you're going to want to leave, maybe spend an extra $150 and get a rental car for the weekend because you're going to, your two Uber rides would cost you that and you might not even be able to get one. So it's just good to think through those little things.
Yep. And I'll step back in a second and say too, that it's important for me to remember the level of privilege that a lot of us sit in where we have Uber money, we have a car, or we have this, or we have, the money to do a rental car. And so
it's all relative.
I think back to my gosh, in my early 20s when I had first gotten sober, I was on food stamps. The first year of sobriety. And
I do not come from money either. So for me, it would be knowing where my mom's car keys are.
Understanding that for some of you, your level of harm reduction in these type of situations might not even be the ability to physically go somewhere else, but to get up and walk outside of the house. Mm-hmm. It may be one of the grounding techniques that helps re-regulate your nervous system because you're physically unable to leave the environment. But there are a lot of these things that we're talking about today that it's use whatever is the most effective at your disposal to protect yourself. Yep. I think that's the important thing.
Agreed.
And, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that
I don't come from a privileged home, so I know better than to just throw out spend $150, but it's all of these, there's things that we get pressured out of all the time. It's just I can hear someone saying, oh no, you can use my car. Oh no, let's all ride together. Yeah. All these little things where you don't have to do that if you have access to something else. Another good one, if your parents have dogs, don't be afraid to ask to bring yours. It's a really good way to calm your nervous system is to have your pup around, if you can, I think. So we always,
or even if they don't have dogs.
Yeah, I'm like, unless you're allergic, or
Yeah.
I mean, I'm allergic and I just ignore my dog allergy because that's the stupidest thing in the world. But yeah, if they're gonna allow you to bring your dog, like, don't be afraid to ask. It's still your parents, so just maybe take your pup with you.
That's so good, Erin. But this next one, I'm like, I read it and I'm like reading it in such a sarcastic tone.
Okay.
Focus on gratitude. Keep a daily gratitude journal and stay positive. The reason why I'm reading it like that is because it's great advice, but I think it's one of those things that when really needed in the moment of the ick, it's really hard to hear that. Like it's one of those things I think is more doable to start when you're not in a bad situation.
Starting in like a childhood home and during Christmas with your family that's good for you. If you can start your gratitude journal, then it would not be me.
Here's a good don't. I love the don'ts here. Don't attend events where alcohol and drugs will be a major focus. I mean, that is definitely up to your, right? Like, depending on if you're talking, that's your stuff, right? Like, if you're in recovery, if you're not in recovery, I mean, hell, if you're not in recovery, keep in mind, things tend to go certain places when there's a lot of stuff flowing in people's bloodstreams.
Totally.
Don't feel obligated to justify your boundaries to others. Don't skip recovery meetings or practices because of a busy schedule. So again, no matter what you're talking, like addiction, non-addiction, mental health recovery, or you're just an average person that's employing better practices, even those do not say it's a holiday, therefore they don't apply. Mm-hmm. Don't compare yourself to others' social media holiday highlights. That's so true, because so many people have great ones and they pre-planned them and they're perfect and they're blah. I mean, they're great. I shouldn't say they're blah, but it's just, I mean, it's the same thing of like everyday life, but the holidays, you feel it so much more because it's so procured and
you're supposed to be happy.
Mm-hmm, and you don't know what else is going on behind the picture or the content.
It's a highlight reel.
Mm-hmm. Don't overcommit your time and energy to please others.
We got through a lot of stuff.
We really did. Ooh, here's some solutions I want to give that are really great. I hadn't even remembered we put these in here. Stuff that you can do from wherever you're at if you're having. This is literally across the spectrum of distress. So you can join a virtual support group of literally any kind. Google online what they are. You don't have to go if you've never been before. But I will tell you also that if you think that support groups like 12 Steps and others aren't happening during Christmas week because it's Christmas week, you're wrong, because that's the time those of us who regularly go know that it's needed the most. So Google's your friend. You can find it, search it, reach out. There are free mental health apps like Calm, Headspace, and the Insight Timer. Check out all three of those because there's so many resourceful tools to help you in those. And it will keep you busy and give you so many resources. If you're feeling like you are severely depressed and or let's just say any level of severely depressed or wanting to end things or need someone to talk to, the 988 number you can dial from literally anywhere in the United States, and it will get you on the phone talking with a trained professional immediately. Don't forget that your journey of loving yourself, becoming a better version of yourself, healing is not a race. And what may feel like setbacks, I think it's important to reframe them and look at them like learning opportunities. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the setbacks are there. They're there because a lesson needs to be learned before we can move on and move past it.
Yeah.
And then, books. Okay. So I want to talk books or podcasts. Well, listen to all of if you haven't listened to our episodes, we've got some great ones. So just go back through all of our episodes.
We're ending to this camera because we talked for so long.
We're what?
So we're gonna have to end to this camera because we talked for so long.
Oh, so I don't.
Yours is sad. Your camera's sad now.
Oh, bye, camera.
Or dead.
So, yeah, check out other episodes of our podcast if you have not before. They're all great, but 2 books I wanted to highlight that recently we've had on that are just so good. Kimberly's book, Glimmer.
Be careful with that one if you have a history of abuse during the holidays. Might be a better one to start in the new year, or don't start maybe that in your childhood home unless you know it's not going to trigger you. But Kimberly's, that book is so beautifully written.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about from the healing stand. There's so much healing in it. I wasn't thinking about the part that might trigger.
It's so good.
Yes.
But a lot of what Kimberly Shannon Murphy, who's a good friend of both of us, both of ours and an author, wrote that about her experiences with childhood abuse and like toxic family systems. The book is so beautifully written, but if it is in her childhood home and there is abuse involved, so if you feel like you're going to get triggered, maybe wait till beginning of January for that one.
And lastly, I don't know, I think that like, going back to something we talked about first, stay accountable to what your needs are with whoever you can identify that knows you, knows your heart, knows your ick, like your family's stuff or whatever you're stepping into. Let somebody know what you're going into and what your worries, fears, concerns are and what your goals are so that they can support you and check in with them. Let them be the person they're supposed to be in your life.
Yeah. And you can return the favor when they need it.
Absolutely. I've said so much, so I'm just going to shut up here. Erin, what... What do you want to leave with people? This is, I mean, you know, even for those who aren't celebrating Christmas this week, the week of Christmas is still different for everybody. The whole world is shut down and weird and all the stuff. What do you want to say?
I think that's hard. I think understanding maybe that one of the hardest things in life is trying to make difficult people love you. That's a Dr. Ramani saying. And that is, love looks different for everybody, I know, but just remember that a lot of whatever you're pulling for, either those people don't know how to love, they don't have the capacity to do so, but that it's not about you. Those things are almost always about them. And this is good for me to remind myself. So that one of those biggest pain points is trying to make difficult people love you. And it's a pattern for a lot of us. So not really any advice, just remember that that's what we're doing. Give yourself a little bit of grace and know that that's oftentimes a job that we're not in charge of because we can't really change it. It's kind of depressing, but not really though.
I think the depressing part is that so many of us are stuck in that loop. That don't, I mean, like literally just need to hear the key of that thought.
And that it is difficult and that they can be difficult and that all you're looking for is love and acceptance. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But if it doesn't work, quote unquote, it's not you.
How do you define working and or a successful holiday or family interaction?
Ooh. When you get out of it feeling like you had your own back. What's yours?
That just led me to another question for you, but this isn't an interview.
That's okay.
No, I was just going to ask you that, like, are you the only one that's going to?
Ooh, that's a good question. Not anymore. I think that there was a time where, my answer to that really would have been yes. Because I'm the difficult, dramatic one, which was just the one telling the truth. But no, when I was 12 and my brother was 6.5, yeah, I would say I was the only one. But now my brother's 30 and I'm 35. So Sean will step in if I need him to say something or do something. But there are periods of time where, age gaps or whatever it is. I felt alone and now I don't.
Yeah. I think knowing you how I do, I think you articulated that quite well. And so turning that back around and answering your question for me, I think the biggest thing for me is just knowing that I participated and I showed up in a meaningful way in whatever environment that I was in, to pause from normal life. Mm-hmm. That's a big difficulty for me. Celebrate whatever. Mm-hmm. Take a moment to celebrate what I can identify is worth celebrating in my life or those of the lives around me. Try and recognize gratitude that I have for what I have, and look at the purpose that is what ignites me going forward into the new year. Those are like super, I don't know, super woo-woo, super coachy, super whatever. But like, for me, it's just, like I told you, it's not about there's no tradition anymore. There's no this, there's no that. And so really it's no matter what I'm doing, it's just that I participated in making it meaningful and getting the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And showing up for myself in those ways that I just described. So, staying sober.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job at that.
Thanks. But like we talked about earlier in the episode, celebrating the wins, the longer I stay sober, the easier it is to be like, well, yeah, but you've been sober so long. People say that to me all the time. And it's easy for me to internalize that and be like, yep, well, that's just the expectation now because, but it's important that I do recognize regularly that that's still a milestone, even though I don't have thoughts of wanting to drink really ever.
Yeah.
I'm doing what it takes to protect myself and maintain my sobriety throughout the year.
Yep. It's
a big deal. So, shout out to all of you that are participating in things that are protecting you, making you grow. If you're watching this podcast, that counts as you. Or listening. We're so glad that you tuned in, and we hope that you got something out of this. Hopefully we didn't trigger you.
I mean, we couldn't have been that bad.
Who knows? But thank you for joining us in this conversation. And I guess I just want to wish everybody a safe, healthy, happy week. And that you find peace and joy in this time and get prepared for the year to come.
Couldn't have said it better.
And it's never too late to start loving yourself. And you're always only one decision away from a completely different life. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admissions center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.